Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Zwift Community Live Vodcast. Well, this is the first, everybody. I'm Nathan Guerra. Kate Bates is next to me, Dave Toll. And we've got some brand new UCI World Championship stuff happening down there over in the corner. I think Anna may be joining us in the future as well, Anna Russell. But this is going to be absolutely awesome. I'm really excited to do our first vodcast, and it is a momentous moment, a great moment to be doing so, as we just saw the first ever UCI World Championships for cycling esports happening out on Zwift. We're going to go over the results real quick. We're going to be looking at what our picks were, where we might have got some things right, where we might have got some things wrong, as well as what that might mean for what a esports athlete is like in cycling. And then we'll also be looking over a little bit of the data as well, which will keep things really interesting. Kate, though, like initial reactions, like as far as this morning, I know it's early. We made Kate get up really early for this.
That's okay. It was worth it. I'm used to it. Us Aussies, we're like conditioned. If you want to watch cycling, you've got to get up at ridiculous hours and pretty much spend most of the racing season getting no sleep. So I've been well drilled. I'm all good. Look, I think it was really interesting. There's no particularly surprising results. There's nothing that happened that I thought, whoa. But I think the sport's evolved to a point now where we can predict winners or styles of winners. And we can go into a bit more detail about our picks before in a bit later. My pick in the men's was quite off, but the sport was right. So I picked Cameron Worth, and he wasn't there in the finale. But Jason Lords, who won, well, he is a rower. He's a world champion rower. So I like to think that I kind of picked the physiology there. And also, in the women, really great result, particularly to see Moa Passio win. I feel like, Dave, we've talked about this a bit off air. She's like the rider that is always there, is kind of always the bridesmaid, and you just want to see that moment where she can step up and take it. And it was right down to the wire with Sarah Gigante. But I'm kind of pleased. I feel like it's a victory for persistence and consistency, and so overall pretty good feels. Yeah, pretty good
I
feels.
completely
Even for
agree.
5:00 in the morning.
So to be fair, Nathan, last night Kate's pick was Sarah Gigante for the win. So Sarah ended up second. I had Lauren Stevens, who was right there, ended up fourth. I was really proud of the effort that both of those Tibco riders made. I want to dovetail onto what you said, though, Kate. I felt like today was validating. For anybody who's been part of the Zwift community. Nathan, I'm going to throw it to you with that, because there is no doubt that if you look at these two top tens, every rider there has Zwift experience. Some of them come straight out of the community. Kristen Kochinski ended up in the top 10 today. Laura Matson-Coe, to me, so yeah, absolutely a worthy winner in Ashley Moolman-Passio. But take a look at seventh place out here. This is a woman who is a full-time orthopedic surgeon, a mom of two, and we're not talking about two self-sufficient 12-year-olds. Her kids are, in that 3-4-year-old range, where Kate, you would know, and Nathan, you too, takes some energy to keep a kid like that reined in. So Nathan, I'm going to throw it to you just based on, for me, it was a victory for the community today. I've waited for this day for a long time. I've thought about what will it be like when we really give the community a fair crack at it. And the World Tour riders, man.
Yeah,
go ahead, Nathan.
I just have to kind of a momentous moment. I have an old school cup here, KISS Road Race Series, old school Zwift logo that I'm drinking my coffee out of. It's a celebration right there to the community, because that's the OG original celebration of the community coming to fruition now, because that's where it all kind of started, was in that KISS Racing. KISS Racing community came out of the Zwift Tuesday night series and Thursday night series, and then the guys who were putting it together like, let's call it something. It was Keep It Simple, Stupid. That's why they called it the KISS Racing series.
I didn't know what that stood for, but that makes sense.
Because it was all complicated and everybody was fighting online about stuff. But speaking of fighting online, we can bring your chat in if you got any chatter you want to bring on in. I see Christian Jensen, Barney NZ, Marshall, I do see you as well, Martina, Daniel Ellis. If you got some chatter, bring it in. We'll try and bring in relevant comments throughout the chatter here as well. Just keep them coming. We love to see all the chat interacting with the community. You're gonna talk. We were talking about the results, though. We do have some of the results here, or the results here. Let's go ahead and take a look at them here. Ashley Moomin Pasio here, 1:13:27. It was a race to the line. A little bit of a gap, as you can see there, back to Kochinski for 9th and 10th between her and Brie Vine, right up to the line there for those top 8, though, as you can see. And then on the men's side of things, now, as you did say, Dave, in here, though, this is before the broadcast. Actually, let's hang here for just a second, Dave. Almost every name in there we have commentated on a very regular basis in the community stuff.
Yeah, Nathan, I mean, I'd even go so far as to say we did these rides when I first was lucky enough to start working with you for a clothing brand. And during those rides, we would have every single Tuesday night, Lauren Stevens would show up. It was very random and fun. And Sarah Gigante would also show up. That's as community as it gets. These weren't even races that we were doing, Nathan. We were having events to get people together during the beginning of COVID lockdown. So absolutely, every single one of these riders we were already familiar with. And, you know, as they say, it's always better to talk good about things that you feel positively about. And this is no knock on World Tour riders. They do just fine in their world. But if you look at it, the reigning world champion, I mean, 2 of the greatest women cyclists of all time were in this race, Anna and Annemiek. They're not in the top 10. This really shows you something.
Yeah, it does. It does. Take a look at the men's side of things then. Jason Osborne. Now, that was a name that kind of came out of nowhere for a lot of the riders, I think. But then Anders Fodegar, Nicholas Patterson, Ali Jones. I mean, these are all riders. The duck there, Matteo Del Sin. I've been racing with this guy on Zwift since 2015. Freddie Ovid is there, World Tour, but also a rider that we've been week in and week out, especially over the summer. We were commentating on Ryan Larson, started the pros college. I mean, Jonas Windberg, though, not a rider I'm super familiar with. They're sitting in the top 10, but most of this, again, coming straight out of the community, goes to show that Zwift racing is its own discipline in a very real way. So, you know, as far as, so let's go ahead and take a look then a little bit deeper then on the women's side of things as far as the results. Let's go over our picks. I'll start out. Kristen Kochinski, that was my pick going into it. I also threw Lou Bates in there as an outsider. Not sure where Lou, I think, finished a little bit further outside the top 10, but Kochinski, the moves went super early with Moolman. She went from bottom to top in exactly the way I had talked about if it wasn't going to be a sprint to the line from that second tier. And Moolman, I think, just got the jump on everybody. Kochinski, I had some messages actually with her after the race and was like, oh, the ability to follow that had just gotten away with me. I wish I could have been on that wheel to follow and maybe done something about it, she had said. But, you know, I'm not sure that anything could have been done, though, because Moolman, at the end of the day, there was just some extra gas in the tank. It was just a walk away in the reality of it. But KK, you know, I think my pick was okay. I think it more of a climber though. More. I mean, if it was like 2 minutes longer, a minute longer, and just a little steeper, I think maybe KK had a better chance.
Let me throw it to you on this one, Kate. Sorry, Kate. I'm just going to throw it to you. Yeah. Kristen Kochinski, who we've commentated on quite a bit on Zwift Community Live, has never raced a bike in real life, ever. Never held a license. So she became part of the UCI drug testing protocol, took out her first ever USA cycling license to get the UCI license. It's absolutely amazing. Tell me your thoughts. If a couple of years ago I told you that someone had never raced a bike before, would ride into the top 10 with riders like Annemiek and Anna. It was a heady list of riders. Would you have said that was even possible?
You know, I actually would have. And I think, so. Let's just drill it back a little bit. Okay, this is cycling esports, but to be what does it take to be a cyclist? I think a lot of what a traditional cyclist is skills, how comfortable you are in a bunch, how you go when it's super windy, where you sit on the road, like the really technical elements of it. I don't have any of that. So I think that just opens it up to a lot more athletes. And we have a bit of a saying, I don't know if it's Aussie actually, maybe, about lungs on a bike. So we say that about any athlete from another sport who comes over to cycling, and they're strong, that they're really fit, but they don't have the skills, and we call them lungs on a bike. And I think this kind of perfectly suits lungs on a bike. And really often in Australia, it's rowers that come across. I don't know. I mean, I think the physiology is similar, and also the work ethic is also there, definitely for the rowers. And we're seeing that shine through. Maybe there is a difference, though. We need to unpack the difference between the men's field and the women's field. Because, Nathan, you take so much pride out of seeing the community league riders step up, and I think that that's really cool as well. But if we just look at the women, a lot of them are kind of more climbers, and they're not the punchy riders. So they're not the sort of riders that would be good in necessarily criteriums or sprinty kind of events. But if we go over to the men, and I do have a point here. You're like, Kate's waffling. It's 5 a.m. Give me a break. If we look over to the men, they're punchier riders and they're heavier. And I know it's indelicate to talk about weight, but they're heavier riders that have higher 15-second, 30-second powers, not so much the 3 to 5 minute. And so I think even that's quite interesting. Is that just because by number within the race, not too many lighter weight riders can compete when all the heavyweights turn up, or is it vice versa? I don't know. I reckon that's something that we can delve into. I know you love your data, Nathan. Maybe you're like, what can we find here? But anyway, I've waffled. I've gone off the point. Let's go back to the very beginning. Are there any surprises in the results? I don't think so. Mormon Passio has raced so much on Zwift this year. She's kind of really embraced it with COVID. So has Sarah Gigante. And I really think moving forward, they'll have quite a special place in their heart for the esports world because, they've got professional contracts, but I kind of feel like the Zwift community got them through the mental challenges of COVID and what a tough year it is. And so I think it'll stick with them. So I reckon we've got some really good ambassadors amongst the women moving forward based on today's results.
That's a great point. And there's a good pick there, almost to the line with Sarah. I mean, she was. I saw her actually over on her profile stories just a moment ago. She posted the picture of her. Let's see if I can bring this up. Actually, how close that this was right at the line here. I actually do have it real quickly. I mean, this is the reality of how close Sarah Gigante was to winning a world championship, and her hilarious finish. The finish forever half wheeled with a laughing face. They're loving Slipstream Sarah. That's where you can find Sarah Gigante over on Instagram. Solid pick, obviously. And can you give us a little bit for those of us around the world, Kate? As far as the reality of Sarah, I think did we lose Kate? We may have lost Kate actually. I think we've got a perma smile. So I think we lost Kate for a moment. So go ahead. You had a great pick there with Lauren. I think she'll probably have to refresh is what's going to happen.
Yeah, those are two riders that were on the Tibco team that really deserved that result that they got. I'd like to go to Ashley Moolman-Passia, though, and say, if you look at it, she's 35 years old. She's been a journeywoman pro. She's seen it all in the world of World Tour cycling. She had to want this more than any other rider out there. And, Sarah Gigante, who's just coming up on 20 years old, she'll be a multiple-time esport world champion in my mind. She's really, really good at this. And Sarah will have her day. I wouldn't worry at all about Sarah. She's a fantastic attitude. I will say a worthy winner in Ashley Moolman-Passia. That's for sure. Good to have you back. I was just saying while you were gone, Kate, that Sarah Gigante, she might have been second today. She, at some point in her career, will be esport world champion. And I'm going to guess she'll be the first multi-time esport world champion. She is so young, so talented, such a great attitude.
Kate, I wanted to ask for the rest of the world too, give us some insight into Sarah Gigante being, from your country and watching her come up and how has this athlete developed, to be at this point, getting a silver medal now at the World Championships?
Yeah, gosh, she's incredible. I mean, she's one of these riders who it looks like people say, she came out of nowhere. Where did she come from? And then bit by bit, all the photos of her winning every race from, under 11s up starts to emerge. She's just one of these riders who fell in love with cycling. She's got a mum and a dad who are incredibly supportive of her, which is unreal. She's only 20. So she was Aussie National Road Champion in 2019. So as a 19-year-old, like, just unbelievable. The kind of eye-popping talent that people are now considering, how do we nurture this? How do we make sure she can stay in the sport for over a decade? Because as a 20-year-old, when you're doing so well, you don't want to burn out. You don't want to go down that track. And I think in a backwards way, and she might not agree with this based on how hard 2020 has been with COVID, I think it's kind of suited her trajectory because it's kept her a bit more constrained and allowed her to develop for another year before she kind of hits that world tour, because it's a whole different world.
Extremely
in
motivated?
the world tour.
Are you saying extremely motivated athlete that can almost
extremely
overdo it at that kind of fire burning inside at that age? And the reality of bike racing, it's a sport that can take its toll in some ways though too. So without the burnout kind of a thing, maybe aiming at a little bit. And huge result. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, part of that's going to come from her family, Kate. I saw that as she was racing last week, her family was camping near the race venue, and every day her mom would get on her own bike and ride over to the course, cheer on her daughter, who was racing alone against a very strong team of 7, and then ride back to the campsite. That family lives and breathes cycling, being outdoors. I'm not going to worry about Sarah Gigante.
Yeah.
She's just got a great head on her shoulders, and I think, Nathan, that's the difference here.
Yeah.
She's been built up, as you said, racing since she was 10. She's got a really strong base underneath her for a 20-year-old. She's no flash in the pan, that's for sure.
Well, I'm really interested to see how the broader cycling world embraces esports as a result and something to kind of fly their flag on. Like, will Tibco be advertising that they have a world champion? I hope so.
Yes.
And I also think,
absolutely,
even in terms of, the more traditional route of Olympic selection, are there now a whole heap of Aussie girls that are going, oh God, she's a world champion. Where does that, and this is kind of a bit boring, like a spreadsheet, but where does an esports world championship result, where does that fit into a selection document? Does Cycling USA have, if you finish in the top 10 at a world championship, you have priority selection for an Olympic Games? Do they need to tighten up the wording, or do they need to consider it? I'm quite fascinated with some of the conversations I think will be happening around board tables and amongst selectors. I feel like there's a couple of WhatsApp groups going bananas right now. Like, how do we deal with this? What do we do? It's cool. It's an evolution.
We had a great question come in from Alan Muir here that is on that point, actually, that, what's going on in the background in order to get to this race even. And then from there, how does this race impact the broader world of cycling? And you're in your head thinking this, and I've been in my head thinking similar things about, I want to know what the trajectory is to get to this place or that place, because you've had to fight for that opportunity in the past, right? And so having those structures set up correctly is what sport is, in some ways, the administration side really is all about, and doing it right. So Alan Muir came in through. How did all these indoor pros qualify for the race? How did they get there? So just as a heads up there, Alan, it was the national federations that had the say about who was going. Everybody had to be on early on. There was actually a little bit of controversy in the community because you had to be on the UCI's doping protocols, if I'm not incorrect, right, Dave? You had to be on the UCI's doping protocols so that you could be tested. Yeah, and so a lot of the Zwift community people didn't have UCI license and weren't racing under those protocols. So we had this rush that happened because all of a sudden these announcements came out for these people who were on those protocols. And then the Zwift community was like, whoa, here's the fast people. What are you talking about? And then all of a sudden we had to get together and new people got put on the list. So Dave, you want to speak a little bit to how that ended up playing out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first off, to frame that, for me, today was the day that the world of sport is going to realize that this esports cycling that we're doing on Zwift is now its own unique standalone sport. This is no longer a stepchild of World Tour racing. It's its own thing. Sure, there's going to be some World Tour riders that are really good at this. Not all of them. As a matter of fact, most of them aren't excellent at this. It's someone who dedicates themselves to this specific cycling craft. There's track racing, there's BMX, there's mountain biking. I mean, even in mountain biking, you've got short track, marathon. Well, e-cycling is a thing. It arrived today, I would say, and there's going to be specialists in this discipline. So, Nathan, I think this was the most significant threshold that the sport has passed through. The next one will be the Olympic Games. That's really the next thing on the horizon, and we're heading there. We're definitely heading there. So, that being said.
Yeah.
When you look at how everything played out today, it was interesting because, that's a perfect example. The Kristen Kochinski's or the Laura Matson-Coes or Jackie Godby deserves a shout out for, America had 4 riders up in the top 10 today. It wasn't just Lauren Stevens in 4th. Now, Lauren Stevens has been part of the
that's your pick. That's your pick, Dave. So we need to go on to that. So we got the KK pick. We had the Sarah Gigante pick. Now Lauren Stevens, I thought she was going to get third. I thought she was. It was right there. I thought she did, and then we had some back end API. Don't lie situation going down.
Okay, that's the T-shirt that I'm getting for Nathan for Christmas. Back end API, don't lie.
Don't lie.
I'll bring this up. Go ahead and speak to that real quickly there. With the 4th place, though, I mean, your pick, and, I was on you a little bit about it, but she ended up definitely pulling off. I thought she was going to, and I wonder if they kind of let it go a little bit early on. Like Ashley went so early that maybe they didn't believe it was going to stick and that it was going to chase back down. That's what was going on in my head as a commentator. If I were actually watching the race, I thought Ashley was going to get reeled back in by a charging pack, but she just hung on. I mean, she didn't just hang on. She distanced herself. So Lauren, I think maybe the plan didn't work out.
I would agree. I missed it by that much, as they used to say on Get Smart. She was so close. I think it came down to will, to be honest, Kate. We talked about that. Ashley Moolman, she wanted this so badly she could taste it at 1K to go. And she licked her plate clean. And that was an effort. I don't know that I've seen anyone dig deeper because I would have bet dollars to donuts. There's the American saying I bet you don't use in Australia. Dollars to donuts.
I'll steal that.
Because we just got smokied last night by Kate, learning what a dark horse is in Australia. But when you look at it there, I thought Gigante was going to come around. I was sure to myself that Gigante was going to come around. But Moolman just showed what pure will do for you.
All right. I'm going to say something controversial. Sorry, with 2 Americans on the call, this is a little bit of a risk, but I'll do it anyway. Do we think that given we had 4 Americans in the top 10, but not on the podium, do we think that maybe they stuffed up from a team perspective? Maybe could have drilled that a little bit more?
Here's my. Can I jump in first, Nathan?
You go right ahead. Go right ahead.
Because
that one's all yours. That one's all yours, Dave.
And this speaks to when you look at the federation and where all of these riders are coming from. They were not a cohesive unit when you talk about the USA team. I felt like the Canadians in the men's race showed us the best national organization. If you go back and watch that men's race, from about 3K to the finish, the Canadians, it didn't quite work out the way they wanted, but they had a plan. They were attacking with Jordan Shane. They went after it, trying to set up Matteo Delsin, their guy. Mm-hmm. He didn't quite get there, but at least they had a plan. If the Americans had done that, if they had used Kochinski, Matson-Coe, and Godby for Stevens, I think Lauren might have won.
You don't think they tried to do that? I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. I think here, like.
I think everyone was riding for themselves. I think by the time they hit 1K to go, every American was looking to get their own result. That's just the way I see it.
I think Christy Tracy played the fiddle, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, no, I was just going to say they haven't held racing licenses. So they're lungs on a bike and they're great athletes, but do they even know the ins and outs and the strategy around teamwork and helping? because it takes years, decades to really learn the art of it. I mean, maybe their willingness was there, but just the execution will take some time.
And
Yeah, I
cycling is an intrinsically selfish sport. I mean, you have to look after yourself when you sleep, when you eat, when you train. It's always going to be about you. And esports is even more so because you control every single element of things. So
You're
why
in
would
your
I want to
pain
help someone
cave
else?
alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. So, but I think, okay, so I saw Kochinski doing something, because I did some recon rides with 2020, and I saw Kochinski doing some things that we had not planned, like that we hadn't talked about in any way whatsoever. And I wasn't a part of like the planning, but I had said, hey, during this point to this, and this is a good idea, and kind of just a little bit of coaching along. And she was on the front pushing the pace on the reverse KOM and on lap 2. And I was like, what are you doing? Nicola's messaging me going, that wasn't a part of what, you know, and I have a feeling that there was a little bit of marching orders, because then Christy Tracy, I mean, literally just wrecks her whole race. Christy Tracy knows Zwift in and out. She knows she is not winning going at the 1K, not like, I don't know, it was like 800 or 1K. No, it was a little less than 1K, a little more than 1K to go at the bottom before they even hit the climb.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that they may have been trying to do something there, but I'm not sure that it was the best. Maybe it wasn't the best plan for what needed to happen. Or I really just think that Ashley got the jump on the whole USA team, though, too. I really think that she caught them off guard with the way she went. Because I saw something similar in the Nations Challenge over the weekend. And it was kind of turned into a recon ride on the Saturday ride, and Antonina Reznikov did the exact same thing that Molman did. She went a little bit earlier than everyone was prepared for, and she held it and extended even the gap after, you know, from bottom to top. So I have a feeling that they tried to. I have a feeling they were cohesive, but maybe the plan itself didn't play out, or the marching orders didn't play out the way that they thought. It was good on paper. When it got to the board, the equation just fell apart because there were other variables got in the middle of it all.
That's bike racing.
Yeah. It's bike racing.
That's a good summary of it, I think.
Yeah. So, well,
let's talk about the men, guys. Let's jump into the men here.
Yeah, so on the men's side of things, Dave, go ahead. Let's take a look at this here. This is really interesting with Jason on the top there, a rower. I mean, that was unexpected, Dave.
Well, so I've always wondered, if you're a fan of cycling, Primoz Roglic, and how much we've talked about him being a ski jumper, right? So I wonder at rowing competitions now, are they going to talk about Jason Osborne as an e-cyclist? Because this is a huge result. Now, he was 7th in the German National Time Trial Championship, so he has a little bit of in real life cycling experience, but I think this speaks to physiology. An athlete is an athlete. Can you imagine what his cardiovascular system must look like? I mean, if you look a little deeper here, 2 Danes on that podium. Nathan, Nicholas Pedersen, he was one of the standout riders in the ZRL. This is as community as it gets when you talk about Pedersen here. A lot of these, very much like the women. There's a smattering of World Tour here, or Pro Continental in Matteo Dalsin's case. But what you're really looking at is a lot of guys with Zwift racing experience.
Yeah, I think also the type of rider too is really being accentuated here. I think that you are really starting to see a hierarchy of types of fitness, type of rider that is starting to emerge in Zwift racing. And there is something to be said for the fact that a rower coming out of that type of exercise physiology that excels is able to take this down. During the race, I was doing a little bit of a chat on my Twitch stream and just kind of watching Zwift Power alongside of the broadcast on another screen. And I literally picked out the top 10 pretty much just by looking at power profiles in the men's race. Like just by looking, here's the 1 minute power. Here's people I know that are like, I wouldn't call it punchers though. I feel like, would Alaphilippe be in and amongst this? Maybe, I don't know. We haven't seen him race out on Zwift, but I mean, you have these like extreme punchers. I would call them extreme punchers. It's like a 1.5 minute, everything, 1 minute, everything you got, 10 to 11 watts per kilogram, full gas. And it's kind of this mixture, you know what I mean? We've said it's like cyclocross, we've said it's like mountain bike, but I think it's like a little bit more extreme than that, but not full on track racing because you can't be that heavy necessarily. Kate, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it's interesting because with talking about the women, you said, 800 meters, you know that's too early to go. But actually in his post-race interview, Jason Osborne said 800 meters was his marker. So Dave, we talked till the cows come home about finding a marker on the course and where to go. And he said for him, it was the 800 meter mark. And he said, you don't want to go too hard. You don't want to go too late. And he had Jonas Rapp, his German teammate, drop him off at the 800 meter mark. He knows from his Zwift power, but probably from endless sessions on the bike and on the rowing ergo, he knows exactly how long until the energy runs out. And we're talking about a world champion, guys. He's not somebody who's just jumped on a bike and happens to be pretty good. He's the best of the best, and he's, quite likely going to win an Olympic gold medal next year in Tokyo in the lightweight men's double sculls. So he is absolute royalty when it comes to rowing. So I think it would be really easy for the cycling world to kind of dismiss the result and say it was a bit of an outlier. But I don't think it was. I think he was quite smart. The German team were really drilled with how they did their strategy. They were clearly working really well together. And the fact that he knew the 800 meter mark because he knew that his 1 minute power was dominant to everybody else's, I think it's kind of, it brings to the fore the guys who have a really good head on their shoulders, who are smart, who analyze it, they're kind of more than, it's a terrible term, but we use it in Australia about some people. I think I'm going to get known for this. I think it's Australian. Sorry to offend anyone. He's not just a meathead. He's not just a strong guy who does what he's told and can't think independently. I think quite the opposite. And I think the whole German team did a really, really good job of working to every strength that the esport world offers them. So I'm impressed. I mean, I thought the Aussie rower Cameron Worth might stand up, and it wasn't his day, but it's the same reason, because he's that mentality. He knows how to race and he knows what his body can do and when it runs out. And when you've got all those numbers up in front of you, well, it's a given that you can control it a lot more than IRL.
When you do crew or when you row at a regatta, you race your race. And in this instance, Jason raced his race. He wasn't basing his effort off of what other people were doing, Nathan. He had a plan. At 800 meters, I'm going all in. Every single chip I can find, I'm pushing right into the middle of the table, and we'll let it all sort itself out. The best athlete is going to win this race. And I can really respect that. That's mindset that you're talking about right there, Kate. And that was the difference out there. Again, a lot of racers wait to see what others are doing, like a chess match, and they're going to make their move after you make your move. He didn't wait for anybody. He just threw it down like a boss. And that was a very impressive way to win.
I want to speak to that.
I like that, like a boss.
I want to speak to the like a boss effort that was needed too in both of the races. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Kate. Maybe you can also like relate to this a little bit, but those type of efforts you're in the middle of and you think there's nothing left in the tank and you find that extra level. And I feel like it's a 2-tier climb, and each time I thought that the person who won had gone too early, the pack was going to roll through the flat and then was going to come back and consume them in a second sprint. And instead, what I saw from Jason Osborne was 12 watts per kilogram halfway up the second tier with 300 meters to go and distanced himself. And I said, this race is over. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is already done. He has just won this. And I thought the whole pack was going to come and consume. My pick, Holden, I mean, it ended up not being a sprinter's day whatsoever. You can't hang on at those kind of watts per kilogram at that kind of an effort and then try and sprint across that. You weren't going to hang on to that flat section. My pick was, I mean, Holden had a good day, but his buddy Ryan Larson, he ended up taking a top 10 in 9th place and showed that it was more of those punchier climbers. And, again, just there's a certain kind of effort. There's a certain kind of workout that I remember doing where it was like you go into the red for that 45 seconds. And then it usually in some workouts, if you're doing repeats, it's that you finish out at like a certain wattage. But in some of the workouts, you go for that 40 to 45 seconds and then you shift up and you finish completely. That was the kind of effort that was needed in order to get across the line. And it looked perfectly trained. Jason Osborne taking it down there. Lionel Sanders had a good day, though, I think. To his strengths.
He played a role.
To his strengths, exactly, I think. And that was your pick, Dave. And I was talking on live stream as well or during our chat that his only hope, in my opinion, was to win like he did on the UCI Richmond course and go from, 5K, 3K. And him and Shane tried to make it happen. The Canadians showed up.
Yeah, I have to give them credit. As I was saying, Canada might have had the best cohesive collective effort as a nation out there. It didn't pay off, but my thought was that they were all in for Matteo Delcin there, and everybody played their role. And that's a big, big ask. That was what we were just talking about 5 minutes ago here, is trying to get people to go and buy in on the team concept. Get away from that. You're a racer. You're racing against everybody. Now, this is a different world. And Kate, that's one of the really hard buy-ins to get with athletes, is to commit to, you're not going to get a result today. It's going to be another rider who gets the jersey, but we'll all know that you were a big hero. It wouldn't have happened without you. But not every rider is ready to buy in on that.
No, I mean, the motivation's pretty easy for the men, I think, because a lot of them, it comes down to contract money and performance. And, a lot of them are essentially paid to be really good teammates with no expectation of ever getting an opportunity for the win. And they're comfortable with that. And, so for them, it's not a big deal to be the worker because it is literally what they're paid to do. It's pretty different on the women, though. I mean, it is evolving now where a lot of the women are being paid livable wages. But there will be an interesting intersection, I think, there in the coming years around the esports world. What is the impetus to work for your teammate? Does it all come down to national pride? Because when you're sweating it out in your pain cave day in and day out and there's nobody there with you, yes, they are your teammates. Yes, there is national pride on the line, but it's not nearly as tangible or as strong as if you're seeing these people day in and day out. Like, you do the wrong thing by somebody in a Zwift race, you just button off, see you later. If you do something wrong by a teammate at a race, you got to sit across from them at dinner, right? It's a bit of a different dynamic. And, I don't know. I think that we'll see perhaps a few fisticuffs in the coming years as that all kind of finds its place.
Yeah, so let's go ahead. I'm going to move on to a little bit of data here real quickly on the. I mean, that's a great point. Like, you can't.
I'm loving the ghosting concept. You can't.
Yeah,
ghost
like you can just.
in real life.
You can't ghost somebody in real life, but on Zwift, it's whatever.
Yeah.
Like, see you later. Like, you can give an elbow,
and then you turn up and your avatar's got dark glasses on and a
like you can
headband.
just. Well, that's what's interesting. Okay, I am going to speak to that just a little bit because when you throw these athletes together even into a team car on these trade teams too, especially, I wonder if it gets a little bit more, and I maybe have sensed that a little bit, that there's a little more like, and when you're not right next to each other, living with them day in and day, because it already gets a little bit of, intensity, I would think, in the real life, so...
I have literally, I won't name names, but they were on the same team as Kate Bates at an event called Tulsa Tough. Two brothers racing for a pro cycling team in a fist fight where the police were called after a race.
Yeah,
and so it's like, they're brothers, it's fine, don't worry. And the police walked away. But
yeah, gotcha.
The neighbors were concerned, that's for sure. So
yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm hearing Marcel Mosgaard coming in saying Denmark had a plan. Frederick Muff and Michael Waldgren shut down the breakaway so Pedersen and Foldegaard would be ready for the final, and that really did work out. And I want to speak to that because on the data side of things, that's a great little segue. I want to show an idea of, and these are going to be the personal bests set by both of the winners are on their profiles on Zwift Power right now. They updated specifically today. I refreshed them, and both of them updated at the top. You can see Ashley Molman, Pasio. These are the results. This is the kind of situation that you would have to be in as far as, what's interesting also, I wanted to say that these athletes from in real life also, they showed up with some training on Zwift Racing because the numbers dropped intensely after the first lap. Everybody calmed right on down and were waiting for those moments. It was planned. It wasn't this kind of like full gas, just pushing. And the in real life riders didn't necessarily just get dropped off real quickly in the sense that usually you see them putting way too much effort. I think there's been a lot of homework was done. In both of these situations, we don't see an over 5 watt per kilogram consistency. It's a little bit more tempered, it looks like, on the day here. But you do see, these are the winning moves that were to be seen. It was a 15-second, 9.8 watts per kilogram, 483 watts. It was 8.59, 421 watts for 1 minute, and her 5-minute best forever. We're not going to have a 1.5 or anything like that, but this is what you're looking at there on the women's side of things. On the men's side of things, coming from Jason, go ahead and bring this up here real quickly. You're seeing that this is, and I saw this across the board in the top 10 watts per kilogram or more at 739. That was going to be needed. You see the same thing coming from Pedersen. Similar thing, 10.7. You're seeing the same thing from Foldiger also in a 11.3 actually. And I actually nipped him for the win maybe when I was talking a little bit, not in my pre-predictions the day before, but actually during the live stream this morning, I was saying, 11.3 for 1 minute, that might be able to pull things off here, but that's most likely done not in this race, and that's not tired. Coming in a little, that was probably at a different time than during this race. So, but we want to give us an idea here, Kate. I mean, that 8.59 for 1 minute on a women's side of things, speaking to the data here, talk about world class and just a walkaway effort there with a 130 over the top of that KOM.
Yeah, I mean, she puts out powers that are typical of a different style of rider. She's a climber, she's really lightweight, and typically I think where she really excels is that she can accelerate up climbs. She's not the kind of rider who can sit at a high power for the entire long climb, but where she really damages legs is those punchier sections because she can go, recover. And that suited her really well today, I think. But, I think we've got to give her a lot of credit because she's been on Zwift all year. She's been racing everything that she can. She's got, if you check out her social media, this really cool dialed setup where she's got a bike on a platform that moves with her, so it's more lifelike and realistic. Like, they've gone to town. They've really put a lot of effort into making sure that this can be a good opportunity for her. I think that quite possibly she's looked at the data, her and her husband are very switched on, and said, to win on this course, I'm going to need my 1 minute power to be my calling card. And I wouldn't surprise me if she's actually gone away with that insight and knowledge and trained for it. And that's something that you don't have IRL. You can do course recons, sure. But in Zwift, you can go and ride segments again and again and again, see where your weak points are on a course and really train to that. And, I'd be interested to see how Osborne approached it as well. But I think Ashley has been pretty specific about how she's gone about this.
There's a crossover here from esports, from traditional esports too, because when you talk about dialing in your ability in any game that you're going and playing, you have these ideas of like actions per minute. You have ideas of having accuracy and being able to hit your shots. And you can just jump into the environment that you're going to go and compete in and practice it over and over and over and over. And you have these esports athletes, there'll be controversy in chat about whether or not they're athletes, but you have in their world, they call them athletes, and they're training 8 to 12 hours a day. They're taking breaks. They go to the gym actually in order to get faster neural responses for clicking the mouse correctly and having their eyes set up correct. I mean, they're out there training in certain ways in order to get better at their interactions in front of the computer, but they can just jump into the environment like you're saying and practice it over and over and over and over again, the same exact moment that's going to come at them. And that's a really good point that changes things up here.
Nathan, that sport exists in the Olympic Games already. there's shooting, there's archery in the
Good point.
Olympics,
Good
right?
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. That's a
Well,
great
and can
point.
we just say that if breakdancing can be an Olympic sport now, surely esports cycling can be. Like, come on.
True.
I would
Very
agree
true.
with that
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Now we have had some comments coming through about the course, and I do want to hit on this a little bit, looking forward too, and looking back at the course that was used. Some people are saying, was the course hard enough? Right. So as far as the difficulty, we're looking at Harrogate. In my mind, if we wanted to make it harder, we do the course we had yesterday in the ZRL community races. Maybe if we wanted to make it harder, UCI Richmond's reverse, maybe even or forward. Maybe I'm trying to think of another course that might just be a punch in the gut.
I'm just gonna cut. I'm gonna cut you off right there.
No,
because you could race in a car park. And the course would be hard enough. It's not the course; it's how the athletes
Racers
ride
make the
it.
race.
And
Absolutely,
racers
make the
And
race every time. Yep.
I mean, look at track cycling. That's not a hard course, but it's pretty exciting racing.
Pretty flat.
Like I think it's
flat?
pretty flat out there,
Yeah.
pretty repetitive.
Yeah.
No technical corners. No, but I think it's kind of a thing that we do. We dissect the course so much. Did it need to be harder? What kind of rider did it suit? And we turn ourselves in knots about it. I think the onus is on the athletes. Some riders will it'll suit some styles more than others, but you can make anything a hard and exciting race. Anything.
Yeah, Nathan, what I'm going to say is we should mix it up just like the road worlds do. They had to throw a Zolder World Championships in there to get Mario Cipollini at least one rainbow band, right? They raced on a flat auto track to get Mario that. So maybe we should, 1 year is going to be good for the punchers, 1 good year for the rollers, 1 year for the sprinters, and we just kind of rotate that way. I think that would be my thought on how we do it. Try to suit different. You want a Mark Cavendish to win. You want a Rigoberto Urán to win. A Jens Vogt to win, right?
Yeah. And
then
at the same time, like you said, though, if a team shows up to throw a wrench in that, they can show up and throw a wrench in it too. You make the race hard, and you can make the race hard enough that the sprinters can't hang on, or a team has to show up to work in order to get them to the line. So that's a great point there, Dave, that, and Kate, that's a great, shout out to, because there's been quite a few comments that have been saying, well, of course, or well, and then, no, wait. If the athletes of the teams wanted to make it a different race, they could have made it a different race, and they could have thrown some more chips on the line. And that also speaks to how, cool as a cucumber were a lot of people sitting in. You know what I mean? There were a lot of people the second half of the race waiting for what they had practiced, which was going to be everybody knew the Ford KOM was the place that things were going to happen. And they decided with the way they raced that race to make it that way, Kate.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's nothing I get more pleasure out of than watching somebody win on a course that everyone says didn't suit them. I feel like ultimately they walk away and they're like, gotcha, because I think that's cool. And I do think that a lot of that comes down to team strategy. And, we've talked about the teams that worked really well and what results came from that. And we've talked about maybe some teams not having a lot of cohesion. I think that's a bigger factor.
Yeah,
that works in both the positive and the negative too, because if you had told Peter Sagan that Greg Van Avermaet was going to win the Olympic medal, the gold medal in 2016 in Rio, Peter would have decided he would have raced, because that would have meant that he could have been in the group that went for the gold. He thought there was no chance so he decided to do the mountain bike thing. So the positive, the negative side of things, it's really interesting. But Nathan, your point is a really good one too. That's what a team is for, is to figure out your best chance on that team and then make the race to suit them. And that's when a team is operating at a high level, is when you start dictating to other teams and take them out of their comfort zone, all to suit your rider in the finale.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, as you did say earlier, we saw a top 10 represent that well. We saw the winners, especially in the men's race, represent that well. Ashley played an amazing race. I think in some ways a little bit obviously solo. I mean, showing up with stuff for South Africa, but in the men's race, we definitely saw that play out in a lot of ways, with some chase downs too, with Canada trying to get away late. But all right, so we ended up, as I've learned, is called waffling on for quite a long time. But it's an amazing day. This is our first go at doing a vodcast. It's been a lot of fun. You can always go back if you're just tuning in, check out the replay. Next up, that's coming up on Zwift Community Live is going to be tomorrow's WTRL TTT. Dave and myself are going to be on that. Over the weekend, we're going to be doing the Omnium for Triumph on Saturday and Sunday, an inclusion charity that's all about including disabled athletes and getting them abled to the line. That's going to be really great. And then next week, cool. Kate, myself, Dave, Anna will all be back for ZRL number 10 for the final TTT. Any final thoughts though, real quickly, Kate, and then Dave, like on World Championships, obviously first ever, amazing that we have this. It's been a long time in the making.
Yeah, I mean, congratulations to all the athletes and the teams involved, because I think it's just been sensational. And as Dave said at the beginning, I think it's legitimate. You know, esports has arrived in cycling. We've got a rainbow jersey now. I think it's just onwards and upwards from here in the esports cycling world.
I'll dovetail onto that, Nathan, and thank Eric Min for his vision. I know when I first saw Zwift and met you, Nathan, I could tell that racing was going to be a lot of fun on this platform. And I feel like that really was validated today. It was great racing, worthy winners. Everybody who watched got to watch a really cool bike race. Today was a big step forward for esports.
100%. Huge step forward for esports, everybody. Thanks a lot for tuning in. We really appreciate it. We'll see you tomorrow for WTRL TTT number 86, 87. Thousands of racers. Tune in for that. I hear we are going to have some medalists, it sounds like. Maybe the winner, I'm not sure, but you're going to see some star-studded WTRL TTT tomorrow. It's going to be great. As always, everybody, thanks for tuning in and ride on.
That's